All right, let's get started. So, share screen. So, if you haven't already, just open up Autodesk Fusion 360 right now. And so basically for today's agenda, we're going to be CADing a Rubik's Cube. And then I'm gonna show you how to export CAD designs from Fusion 360 and also a quick bit about like slicing your CAD design and stuff at the end. And then so we're gonna so for the CAD, we're just gonna make a Rubik's Cube. And so for the Rubik's Cube, if you've ever like seen an actual Rubik's Cube, it basically has a few main pieces. So it has the corner piece. Let me kind of show you. So here. It has the corner piece. So if you were to go, for example, to a, for example, this one, okay. So if you were to look at the Rubik's Cube, it has three main types of pieces. So it has the center piece, so the piece that goes in the center, and then it also has this edge piece, the piece that goes on the edge of the cube, and then it has this corner piece, so this piece that goes in the corner. And so basically what we're going to do today is we're going to work on making a Rubik's Cube, and we're only going to focus on the corner and the edge piece. We're not going to like make the centerpiece because for this kind of 3D printed Rubik's Cube, it's best to like buy a like spider core and also screws and springs for the center part rather than actually 3D printing it, because it actually doesn't work very well if you 3D print it. So yeah, but we're gonna focus on making the corner and edge piece. So to get started, we're gonna do the same as we always do. We're just gonna save our file, and then we're gonna do the location to wherever you wanna save it. And then this is a 3x3, and then 3x3 Rubik's Cube. And then we're gonna save. And then, as we always do, we're gonna first create a new component, and we're just gonna say we're just gonna call this component like creating the cube. And then we're just gonna start. So the first step is we're just gonna create a skip. So we're just gonna create a cube first, just the entire Rubik's Cube. So we're just gonna create a sketch. And then we want this cube, the center of the cube, to be at the origin. So like the center of the cube needs to be this spot in this center spot here too. So what we're going to do is we're going to use, rather than use a 2-point rectangle to create the square, we're just going to use a center rectangle to create the 2D square. And then we're going to make the dimensions of the rectangle 56 by 56. And the reason why it's 56 by 56 is most standard Rubik's Cube, most standard speed cubes at least, have a size of 56 by 56 by 56. And so if you're going to like get the extra parts for the center and the core, you usually you want the corner and edges to also fit with it. So it has to be a 56 by 56 by 56 cube. So we're just going to create that square, and then that's all we need for the sketch to create the cube. And so now we're just going to extrude it. And then rather than extruding all like 56 millimeters at once, we're going to extrude 28 millimeters on each side. And the reason we do this again is because we want the origin in the origin like point in the center, because it just makes things easier later on. It's not really necessary. Like you can do it with, you can extrude at 56 and then like still do the same thing, but it's going to be a lot more work. So if we leave it in the center, it's going to be less work. And so now we've created a cube. And so for the next step, we're going to create some surfaces, and I'll show you how to do that. And we're going to use those to slice the cube into slice all the cube into its edges and corners, and we basically did like 90% of the work in like just a few steps. So how we're going to do this is we're just going to click create sketch, and then we're going to click on basically any of these planes on the origin. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. And then you're just going to click on one of them and so it has to be a plane on the origin. It can't be a cube face because we want to make sure the sketch is like at the center of the cube. And then so now we're going to draw the lines for cutting. And so basically how we're going to do this is first, since we're drawing on the origin rather than the face of the cube, we can't like, if we draw a line, it doesn't automatically show the parts of the cube. So first we're just gonna draw the square that makes the cube again. So we're just gonna draw a 56 by 56 square. And then we can make the square all construction lines because we don't actually need to use that for any part of cutting out the pieces of the Rubik's Cube. And then we're just going to draw 3 additional lines to split the cube because Rubik's Cube is 3 by 3. We're going to just draw 3 lines to split the cube to make it 3 by 3. So just draw 3 like lines of really any length from this one end to the other end. And then the way we're going to make sure all the lines, like these 3 lines that we draw, split the Rubik's Cube into 3, is we're just going to click on shift and click on each line. And after you've clicked on all 3 of them, they should each highlight as blue as you click them. You're going to go to constraints. So constraints at the top, and then you're going to click equal, and that just makes them all equal in length. And after that, you can see there's like a bunch of new like equal signs and stuff, and that just makes the lines equal. And you should also make each line also a construction line because we're not going to need to use these to cut the cube either. So just select them one by one and make them construction line. Okay, yeah, so they're construction lines. Okay, and then so the next thing you want to do is so basically we're gonna create to cut it, we're just gonna create this one like giant like circular cutting tool to cut out the core and the sides. And we're just gonna pattern that tool around the cube to cut out all the corners and edges. So how we're going to do this is we're just going to draw a line for the shape of the circular tool, and then we're just going to revolve that line around to create a cutting tool. So this is going to be the center line that we're going to revolve around. So we're just going to draw a line here, and then we're going to draw the cutting tool. So how we're going to do that is we're going to go to this this point over here where like the 2 like, so we drew like 3 lines splitting the cube, splitting the top into thirds. We're just going to draw like, so if we click on line tool and we drag our cursor atop on top of this line, at one point it will like turn into a square, and that's like where like it's like 1/3 of the cube. So if you like click on there and then draw a line down, you're basically splitting like this into a third. So after that, we're just after you find where that point is, you're just gonna draw a line out about 20 or so millimeters And so this is just extra to make sure we cut everything, and I'll show you how it works later. And now we're gonna like draw the actual internal parts that like cut the rest of the cube. So we're just gonna draw uh, a few more lines. So, and they don't need to be of exact measurement because we can adjust them after we draw them. And this you kind of need to like eyeball the size of the cube. So for the first line, we just drag it down a bit. It can be really any measurement. It doesn't need to be exact. And then we draw another line across the cube. And then this line is pretty important. You need to make sure this line is like, um, uh, this line has like a very specific uh, angle. It's pretty specific angle it needs to be at. So it needs to be like going in a little bit, like compared to this diagonal line, it needs to be going like in a bit. And then the amount doesn't matter too much, but it could affect like the aesthetic of the cube later on, I guess. And then next, you're just gonna draw a line across, and then you're gonna draw a line down. And then next, we're gonna use the arc tool and just do a center point arc. And so what that does is it just basically you find you do a center point, kind of like a center point circle, and then you use that to draw an arc. So you only draw like the part of the circle that you need. So you basically use this tool to draw like a little bit of an arc, and then we're going to draw another line down, and then we're going to draw another arc um, to finish this line off, and like that. And so, does anybody have any questions so far about what we've done?
Can you do the sketching again? I got lost.
The sketching is very simple. So, uh, okay, so from the start, you basically first you draw this cube again. So you draw the square 56 by 56 with a rectangle, center rectangle. And then that just makes sure you have a reference. So then next you draw just 3 lines across the top of the square you drew. And then you click on all 3 of them, like click and then shift click and shift click. And then you click on constraints and you click equal to make all the length of these 3 lines equal. And basically you kind of split the top in half. Like there's a point, I mean, in thirds, and then there's like a point where it's like split into 1/3. And then what you can do is you can draw a line out, and that basically makes sure, like when we revolve the line around, it cuts like this corner parts too. Um, and then you just draw some other lines. So you draw a line down, and then a line like diagonally, like downward to the right, kind of, and then another line diagonally downward to the left. Like you can just kind of eyeball these lines. You don't need an exact measurement right now. And then for this one, diagonally downward to the left, you need to make sure it's at um, a bit more of a downward angle than this like 45-degree line that's splitting this uh, that diagonal line, like right here, that's splitting this cube, kind of. You just need to make sure it's at a bit more of a downward angle. And then you draw another like straight line across, basically parallel to this line. And then you draw another line down. And then you use center point arcs to draw 2 arcs. So the first one, both of them use the center point of like the center of the cube. And so you draw one right here, then you do another line, vertical line down a bit, and then you draw another center point arc. And so the reason we need this drawing is we're going to use this to cut the cube later. So does anybody have any other questions? So you're going to see how the drawing comes into play like later. Um, Okay, so no more questions. So I'm gonna continue on. So basically, so now, because you could draw the lines kind of randomly because we're just gonna adjust it like this, and this is still kind of like eyeballing it because there isn't really any exact measurements for this. So you want to make sure like this is quite far away from this line, or else you're gonna like ruin this corner, like you're gonna not have enough space for it. And then you want to make these two lines about the same length, and then uh, just like drag it around and make it till it looks pretty good. And that can like be different for different people, but just drag it around until it's all right. Um, and make sure to like not make any space, like not make any spaces too small like this, because that's going to it's going to make a very thin, like later it'll show like it's going to make parts of the corner piece or edge piece very thin, and that's just going to make it easy to break off. So we can drag this in a bit, and then we can drag that. All right, and then drag it around a bit until like it looks pretty good. And then so then you're done. And then you can click finish sketch. And then you can always come back later. So if you don't like how like the corner or edge piece ends up looking, you can always come back and then double click on this sketch and then change it and then change the revolve tool. So what we're gonna do next is we're going to create the surface for cutting the cube. And so how we're going to do this is, since it's a surface, since these are lines that we're going to be revolving rather than a 2D sketch, what we need to do is we need to go to the surface workspace. So this is where we use the surface workspace. And then we're going to click on this revolve tool. And then we're just going to click on this sketch that we want to revolve, and that will be our profile. And then the axis will be this other line we drew at the center. And you can see it creates this circular cutting tool. And then make sure it's a new body and stuff. And then if we click OK, and if you want to look at it, you can see it creates this like kind of cutting tool. And basically, if we mirror this tool around the cube, it will be able to cut out like all the basic parts of the cube, and then we can just add finishing touches to the rest. So we're just going to uh so now we're just going to mirror this around the cube, and how we're going to do this is we're going to click on this body, and then we're going to go to create, and then pattern, and then circular pattern. And make sure when you use the circular pattern that the type is bodies, and then you're just going to click on this cutting tool that we just made as the object, and then we're going to click on the axis, and the axis is just any other than this axis that rotates the circle around itself. You can click on any of the other two axes, and then just use that. And then make sure the quantity is 4. So we create 4 of the cutting tools, and we basically split it like these 4 ways. And then we can click OK. And then we also need to split these two sides. So we can click on basically any of them. And then we can go to create, and then pattern, and then circular pattern, and then make sure it's in bodies. Okay, and select it again. Basically any of these like new cutting tools that we added, and then we make another pattern, and then we need to make sure it's the other axis we haven't done yet. So it's this axis in this case, and it basically creates 4 more these two cutting tools right here. And it also creates a repeat of this cutting like surface that we made earlier, but that's fine. We can just like we can it'll just be like an extra like body. It won't like really affect our cube later. So basically we can click OK, and now we've created all the cutting tools to cut up the cube. So if you were to like turn off the body, you can see that this is basically all the parts. This is like all these bodies are going to basically cut up the cube, and it's going to create the pieces we need. And so it's kind of like what the core of the cube looks like. So next, we're going to cut up the cube, obviously. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the solid workspace, and then we're going to click modify, and then split body. And then we're going to click on the cube, and then that's the body to split, and then the splitting tool, and then we can just click on any one of these. And I don't know why, but you can't just use all of them at once and just cut it up all at once. So you just have to cut them one by one. And so if you click OK, it'll just it'll split the cube into these two parts, and then you can continue, and then you can like make the body disappear and then continue splitting. And yeah, I don't know why, but like you can't just use all the cutting tools at once for some reason. I'm not sure. Like, see, if you were to do the two main bodies, like here, and then if you were to like click on all the cutting, like first, we have, it'll just give an error. Wait. All right, if you were to click on this cutting tool, it's fine. Like you can click OK. But if you like shift click the rest of them, it says there's a unhandled intersecting tool data. Try without intersecting tools. So we just have to kind of do it one by one. So you can just like click on the two bodies that you've created, and then just cut the next one, click OK. And then since you've already used that tool, you can just make it disappear. And then this is the one we have a repeat of. So as you can see, after I made it disappear, it still didn't disappear. So you can just find the repeat and then, yeah, and then deselect it so that you don't have to cut it one extra time. And then you can move the bodies of the actual cube back up, and then you can continue cutting with the next cutting tool, and you can just use all the cutting tools. I'm not sure. I can try. So someone asked if you can do two parallel ones, since they're not intersecting. And yeah, okay, yeah, okay, that's very smart. Yeah. So someone suggested that you can, since these like two, every side there's like two of them, and then these two aren't intersecting each other, so you can do both of these at once. That is smart. And then you can just cut both of those at once, and then it's like twice as fast, and then you can just deselect both of them. So you can do two at once. So yeah, thank you, Jerry. And then just cut through all the pieces of the cube. So does anybody have any questions about what we've done so far? Like, I'll just ask that while I'm slowly cutting, like using doing the rest of the cutting. No? Okay, so just finish up the cutting, and then split body. Okay, so after we finish the cutting, you can see we've created a cube. And then so basically, like I said earlier at the start, so there's two main pieces to a Rubik's cube, the corner and the edge. So what we can do is we can find a corner and an edge which are next to each other. So for example, in this case, let me see. Okay, these 14 and 15 are like body 14 and 15 are like a corner and edge next to each other. So then after that, we can just hide all the other stuff or delete them if you want to, because we don't, because uh, those, like, we're only going to work on those two pieces, and you're just, if you want to like make the entire cube appear again, you're just going to mirror these pieces again and again till it covers the entire cube. And so basically you can see we got kind of a corner piece and an edge piece. And so that's what is going to talk about next. So yeah, you to split them from the rest of the group, yeah, you want to name them. So you can just double click on them and then name the corner and the edge. And then you can delete the rest of the bodies, or you can just leave them there. It doesn't really matter. Well, if you delete everything else and then say you don't like how your corner turned out and you want to go back to your original sketch and change it, there will be some problems if you delete all the rest of the bodies. So you can just like leave it there if you don't want to do that. And so now that we've created the corner and edge piece, we're just gonna make some quick modifications to them to make them like work better for cube. And so basically, we're just gonna make one of them hidden, and we're just gonna work on the other one. So we're gonna start with the corner, so just hide the edge. And so the first thing we can do is we're just gonna remove any like unnecessary material, because it's gonna provide like unnecessary surface to surface contact, which will create more friction in your Rubik's Cube, and it will be harder to turn. So for example, this thing over here is actually not needed for holding the cube together, so you can just delete it. And so you just click on one of the faces, left click, and then right click. So left click the face till it's highlighted blue, and then right click, and then click on delete. And then you just deleted that. So then you can save your program and your CAD's design so far. And then the next thing is we're gonna make this surface a flat surface so that it's easier to work with. And so how we're gonna do that is we're gonna click construct. So we're just gonna cut off this extra like weird like uh, like arc kind of structure it has. So we're just gonna go to construct, and then we're gonna create a plane through 3 points. So basically any 3 points can make a flat 2D plane. So we're just gonna use this tool to create a plane that cuts across like that, and then just okay. And then next, we're just gonna create an offset plane using this plane that we just created, and then we're gonna move it up to millimeters, or maybe I think usually 2 millimeters is enough. Maybe a little more or a little less might work better, because I kind of eyeballed the first part of like creating like each of the dimensions on the pieces, but 2 millimeters should be enough for this one. Okay, so yeah, someone asked what about the center. So for the centerpiece, we're not gonna go over how to modify it today, because the centerpiece is more complicated, because it needs to be like all four of the centerpieces, or all six, I meant all six on like each face, need to be linked together through what's called like a spider core. So this is here, I can show you quickly. Speed cube spider core should show basically, yeah, they're usually linked together with this kind of spider core, and each of the pieces should have like springs on them, and that just makes it a lot better of a cube to use. Um, and so you can't really 3D print springs or like the very thin pieces used for the core without like it making the cube a lot worse. So you can design your own version, and I kind of did in one of my projects, and it's not working out very well. But basically, the best way to do it is to just buy a like spider core and some springs and screws, and connect it together, and it shouldn't cost that much. It costs like a few dollars. So yeah. So we're just gonna continue making the rest of the cube. And so the next thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna make this first plane we made disappear because we don't need it anymore. We just needed it to make this offset plane. And then what we're gonna use is we're gonna use a tool called Replace Face. And we're just gonna click on these three faces, and then the target face will be so those will be the source faces, and the target face will be this plane we just created. And as you can see, it just flattens out this side of the cube. And so that finishes that. And then what we do next, since now we have like a flattened surface to work with, is now we can cut off like some of the corner parts of the cube and just make it look a bit better, I guess. This next step is mainly for aesthetic reasons, I guess. It also like cuts off the corner and pretty nicely. So we're gonna just do create sketch. And so the next tool we can use, so in this case, if we create a sketch for this space over here, we're kind of blocked by this piece, this part of the corner piece. And so a tool we can use in this case is we can use section analysis, and that basically just splits off the corner piece, and then we can just click on the corner again, and then it just splits it off, so that we can work on it temporarily kind of like cuts off that part, and we can just work on this face without being bothered by the part blocking it. And if you want to like make the other part show again, you can just click on the down arrow of analysis and then just turn off the section cutting thing, and it will just make it show again. So and then then we're going to continue by just making a triangle, inscribed polygon, and then it's a triangle, so it has three sides, and make it the same like size as the surface that we're working with. And then after you finish that, you can't really see it because it's like blocked by the black lines, but the next thing we're going to do is we're going to fillet the triangle. So if you just like hover over the area where the line is, it will like light up blue, and you can click on it, and then you can click on another line to fillet. And then we're going to make the fillet curve thing like 5 millimeters, and then you can do that the same thing with the rest of the sides. And then we're going to do this, and then after you finish that, you can click finish sketch, and then you've created this like triangle like shape kind of. And then then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the extrude tool, and then we're going to use this in a new way. So we can turn off the section analysis thing now. After you select the extrude tool and you select both of this triangle face, this outer face, and this inner like face of the cutoff part. And basically what we're going to do next is we're gonna do a two-way extrude. So it's gonna extrude through both sides, and we're just gonna drag it out like just far enough till it like goes fully through. And then what we're gonna do, rather than cutting through the corner piece, we're gonna use intersect. So the parts that both are extruded through and are in the original body that original corner piece that we're cutting through will stay in the final after the extrude. And what we can do now is we can also adjust the taper angle of the extrude. So like what angle extrudes at, because it doesn't necessarily need to extrude straight out. It can extrude at an angle like going outwards or inwards. And so we can adjust this taper angle. So the first one can be like, will be so one of them will be for the bottom part. And so the bottom part, you just need to make the angle big enough so that everything in the bottom part is in it. So it can just be like 40, anything between like 40 and like 90 or so, or like 80 or so, I guess. And then the top part is the part we wanted to change. So you can make that about 40 or like 30 to 40, and that should be pretty good. So let me just try a few values just to see how it looks. And so I think 40, yeah, is pretty, 40 is usually pretty good. And basically, it kind of, doing this kind of has the same effect as if we fillet it, except for like different parts of this like corner, like edge part are filleted by different amounts. Like this part is probably filleted by like five, like 7, and this part is probably only filleted by like, this part's only filleted by like 5 millimeters. So that's the advantage to doing this. And so after we finish that, we can do some other quick aesthetic things, and then okay, we get actually first we want to make the piece fit better. So for example, if you were to make the edge appear again, like the corner like fits perfectly in the edge in the CAD, obviously, but the CAD is like not representative of a real world situation. So if you were to like 3D print or machine this corner out and the edge part out, and then you were to try and like put them together to use them, it won't fit very well because they're both like the hole for the corner like side piece and like from the edge, and this piece, this connecting piece of the corner are the exact same size, so there's no clearance for it. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to create some clearance. So we're going to click on these faces. We're going to click on the bottom face first, and we're going to use a tool called press pull. And it basically is kind of like the extrude tool, except for you can use it for like more exotic faces, like not, because extrude tool only works for completely flat faces, and then press pull can work for some other types of faces like this one. And we can just do negative 0.1, and it just brings it like it kind of pulls in negative 0.1. It's like extrude in negative 0.1, except for like at the curve like that the object was at. And then we also need to do the same for the top part, negative 0.1. And then we don't need to do this for this stem part because it's going to be technically it would connect to this part of the edge, but we're going to cut that part off later. So we don't, because that part isn't really needed for holding the cube together. So we're not going to need to do any press pulling for that. And then so next we can do an aesthetic thing. So we can just you don't have to do this, but basically we can make the corner piece look a bit better like on the outside. And also whenever like some this message that says like some components have been moved pops up, you just always say capture position, and that's just the normal thing to do. And then so now we're gonna create a sketch on one of the faces of the corner. It doesn't really matter. And then uh we're actually just gonna create like a more square, since we rounded the side of the corner to make it like smoother in terms of use for if we were turning the cube. The corner is already like rounded pretty much, so but like it doesn't look as good as squares. So this is kind of another aesthetic thing. So what you can do is you can just create a sketch and then create a rectangle, and then we can use these constraints called collinear, and they basically make two lines just like this, like the same, like on top of each other. So for example, this line, I want it to be collinear with this side of the corner. So you click on both of them and it makes it, it just connects them together. So if you change like one line, it would change the other. And so this way we just create a more squarish surface for the corner. So then we can extrude. So after we exit the sketch, we can extrude in like 1 millimeter and then join. And then we have like a square surface. So on the outside, it would just look a bit better rather than this weird curve, but it doesn't really change any functionality or anything. So you don't really have to do this while making it. And then we can do the rest to the other corners and I'll just do it pretty quickly because it's not a very important step. Yeah. And then technically, you could maybe try and pattern this feature rather than making it over and over again. But I haven't figured out how to exactly circular pattern it because when you click on the feature, it clicks on the entire like top of the corner. So I just do this usually. Okay, I think it's. Oh, oops. Okay. Okay, so done with that. And you didn't really have to follow that step if I'm going a bit quick, but we don't have that much time left. So I'm just gonna quickly finish the corner piece. So the next step is, yeah, we're just gonna fillet everything. Just makes everything like it's smoother to connect in. So we're gonna first fillet these three like sides, these three edges of this connecting part of the corner. And then we're gonna do like 5. Yeah, 5 looks good. And then it just makes it rounded and just makes it look better. And also like there's less sharp parts. And then next we're gonna click on the fillet tool. And then we're gonna fillet these 3 center parts just because it makes it look better too. And then we're also gonna fillet this, we're also gonna click on this face here and it'll fillet basically these 2 edges of the corner piece, and that can actually make it like easier to like connect corner and edge pieces together. And then we're just gonna fillet all those by 1 millimeter. Actually, we can also yeah, and then we can also do 1 millimeter fillet with the edge of these corners of the like extra like outer surface thing we just created. And then we can do 1 millimeter. And then after that, we then want to fillet like all the edges of like the corner. So we can just click on the top 3 faces of the corner and then we can fillet and then do like 0.5 millimeters. And it'll just fillet all the surrounding edges of those surfaces that we selected. And so now we basically finished the corner. There's a few other things you can do to make it better, I think. But we don't have time for that. Like you can add holes for magnets and stuff. But yeah. So does anybody have any questions about the corner so far? Because now we're going to move on to the edge piece. No, okay. So then we're going to move on to the edge piece. So for the edge piece, what we're going to first do is we're just going to cut off these 2 wings of the edge piece. So this wing here and this wing here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a sketch to be used to cut it off. So we're just going to draw like a square. And then we're going to use the constraint tool to make this line collinear to that line, because the like exact size of this, like the side length of the square is like 18.6666, etc. So it's just easier to use the collinear tool. And then we can just draw like a giant square around it so that we have this like area to cut it with. And then we can click finish sketch. And as you can see, it creates this like surface that if we extrude, it will just cut through the part that we want to cut. And we basically cut off those two wings. And then we can click enter and that'll finish the sketch. And then the next thing we can do is we're now going to use, so the next thing we want to do is we want to cut the edge in half because you can see the edge is like symmetrical on both sides. If you look at it from here, like if you can cut it diagonally in half and it's symmetrical on both sides. So we can just click on the side surface and then we can draw a diagonal line through it. And then we can click finish sketch. And then next we can go to surface tools and then we can extrude the line out to create a new surface. And then we can basically use this surface like we did earlier to cut the corner in half. So we can use split body. We can select the edge as our body to split and then this surface that we just drew as our splitting tool. And then we can click OK. And then it basically splits the corner in half. So as you can see, like you have two pieces. So you can just make one of them hidden and then you can just work on the other side and you can even delete the extra one because we're gonna like make a lot of changes and then we're just gonna mirror the corner over. So the next thing we want to do for the edge is we want to do all the press pull. We want to press pull some of these surfaces so that we have like a little bit more clearance on the edge part too. So we can just press pull this negative 0.1. Okay, and then we can do the same with this side and the top side. And then this surface right here. And then we just do the same with the other side. So we do this one. And this bottom part. And then the top side. And then next we basically do a bit of filleting and chamfering, and then we just round off everything. So the next thing we can do is we can round off these two edges, and we can just use a fillet tool and do like 3 or 4 or even more. Okay, actually we can't actually just do that, never mind. So because the edge gets bigger and bigger as we go in, so it won't work if we just fillet it. So the other way to do this is we create a sketch on here, and then we can create a create a square, and then we can fillet this. So we can just fillet this, and then we can make both like, yeah, that looks good. Okay, so like 9.5, and then we can basically click on these two arcs and then extrude them through the thing. And then we can delete this, I think. Okay, that doesn't work. Okay. All right, actually, okay, so we're just gonna skip this step then if we can't just fillet it. And we're just gonna chamfer some edges and round off some corners then, because there is another way to do it, but it's gonna take a lot more time. So we're just gonna chamfer these two edges by F3. And then we're gonna click OK. And then we're just gonna round off basically all the edges on here. And so one thing you need to make sure while like filleting all the other edges on the edge piece is you don't want to fillet any of these, like any of the edges on this surface, because we're going to mirror this piece to this surface. So if you fillet any of these edges, it's going to look weird. So we're just going to fillet everything else. So I'm just going to select everything. Can also just use the Fillet tool to select it so that you don't have to press Shift every time. And then so after you select everything and then you fillet it by a bit, you're basically done with the edge piece. And then after this, I'm going to show you how to export files from Fusion 360. Or actually, we're going to mirror the edge first after this, and then we're going to show how. So then you can do, oh wait, I didn't select this and this. All right. So some of these edges you can't fillet actually. All right, yeah, okay, 0.5 looks good. All right, so after you filleted all the edges, we can do what we did last time with the hexasphericon, and we can basically click create and then click on mirror, and then we can use change type to bodies, and then we can click on this half edge piece, and then the mirror plane will just be this other side of the edge piece, and then we can select on that, and then it will create the other half, and then we basically finish the edge piece. And then if you bring the corner back in, we basically finished both of the pieces. And so some other stuff we could, so we didn't actually round off this part, but all that really does makes it look a little bit better aesthetically. It doesn't actually do anything like functionally to make the cube better. So other than that, that's it for creating the Rubik's Cube. And so then for exporting files, so what you do is you click on the top file, and then you click export, and then you can rename whatever you want. So this is edge and corner, and then you can export it. So one thing is if you export, so you want to export each piece separately. So if you want to export, like if you have like want to print a few pieces like the corner and the edge, you want to export, you want to have only the corner shown, like everything else hidden, and then you want to export it, and then you want to have only the edge piece shown and then export it, because it makes things easier to move around in the slicing software. And then so when you export it, you can export it into quite a few different things. So .f3d is Fusion 360's like archive file. So it's like the original like backup file for Fusion 360. And so this file can be exported basically instantly. And then for basically any other file, you're basically how Fusion 360 works is Fusion 360 uses like the cloud to do complex operations and exporting things. So basically, if you were to export it as most of these other file types, it will basically send it to Fusion 360's like cloud, and then they will compute like the file to file in the type you want, and then they'll send it back to your computer. And so for exporting these kind of files, you will need internet for Autodesk Fusion 360, but making the actual thing, depending on the tools you use, you probably won't need uh, actual like internet to work on it. And so the next thing, so basically for 3D printing, you have two main files you use. You use either the STL file or the object file. Yeah, so like Jerry said, object and STL are best for 3D printing, and they're what you use. The other file that's like the other file that you might use is step file. So step file is basically, so STL and object are very simple files. They have very little, they tell you just the bare minimum of what you need to know about an object to be able to recreate it. But step file is the file that most CAD softwares use. So if you want to import like a CAD design onto Fusion 360, you want to use a step file rather than a STL file, because an STL file will create this kind of mesh and it's pretty hard to work with. So if you so for 3D printing, you want to use STL or object file, but for other things, for working like importing this into other CAD software, you want to use step file. The other interesting thing is Tinkercad actually doesn't use step files, and it only uses STL and object files. So that's why Tinkercad is for like quick changes. So if you have like an STL of something you want to do, you can use Tinkercad. But for most cases, for other um, like CAD software like Fusion 360, SolidWorks, Onshape, they all use step files. So then just but for 3D printing, so for example, we can just and slicing, we just use an STL file. And so you can do the corner piece, then the edge piece. And it takes quite a bit of time because you have to upload it to the cloud. And here. And if you ever delete this, like the window that shows the status of like exporting, you can always click on job status and then click on view job status to see it again. And because it takes a while, I already exported something else just to show how to slice your thing, your whatever you created. So this is just a quick rundown because the main slicer settings depend on what you're trying to, what kind of printer you have and what you're trying to print. So for Prusa printers, you just use the Prusa Slicer. Um, Okay, it's not opening up. One moment. Okay, and then basically in the slicers software, you can basically change a lot of the settings. So you can either make this part completely solid, or you can make the inside have an infill and stuff. And it's pretty complex topic. There's a lot to talk about. So I won't go over everything today, but basically, okay. Because depending on the printer, it's also very different. So my Prusa slicer is actually not working. So we're just not going to go over the slicer part today, I guess. And yeah, yeah, for the Ender 3, you want to use Ultimaker Cura, which I also have like right here. You can also use Prusa, which works fine, but for Ender, you need to kind of import some settings on it. But yeah, so uh, that's how you make like the Rubik's Cube body, and that's like how you export files. So does anybody have any questions about today's class so far? Like, or at all, like for anything? Okay. So does it seem like anybody has any questions? Yeah, time went by pretty fast. So thank you all for coming today. Next time there will be classes for the Tetravoid Robotics Club. It will be in July. I think July. Let me take a look. July 11th, will 18th and the 25th. There will be classes, and next time we're gonna start on a different topic. We're gonna do cybersecurity networking, and Gordon will be leading the class. And last year, Gordon's cybersecurity team like won state, and their networking was one of the strongest suits. So yeah, next class is on July 11th. So um, there will be a great class to participate in. So thank you all for coming and see you next time. We'll also, like Gordon will announce any tools he needs. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.